Okay, so I think something interesting about this era that we live in is the way that we digest our music. Recently, I listened to the GNX album all the way through. I listened to the Doechii album all the way through. I started the Tyler album, didn't quite get all the way through it. It's not because it's bad, it's a good album. Just we don't consume music the way that we used to anymore. And when I say the way that we used to, some of y'all might not even know what I'm talking about because y'all was born in like 2010, which is perfectly fine, okay? Like, this ain't no ageism, but you have to understand that I started consuming music in the early 80s, really. I think I probably started listening to hip hop in like 1980. I was born in 82, so by the time I was really cognizant of what I was listening to, it had to be like 1985-ish. I mean, had always been around and exposed to music because my dad had a huge record collection. So even when I was a baby, he was walking me around listening to music with me. But the way that we used to consume music were through records. I don't know. That's how I first began. And then when I started to buy music on my own, I was buying tapes. So with tapes, it would be like you listen to side A, and then you would either flip it over yourself or the tape player would flip it over for you, and you listen to side B. And then CDs were introduced, and I remember I wouldn't even buy a CD the first few years they were out because I was so religiously obsessed with tape collecting. And I don't know if it was because of the analog sound or it was just because of what I was used to. But then I eventually started collecting CDs, which is kind of like the first digital wave in a way for us. And with CDs, then you had that turn into the MP3, which is like when you had Pirates, I think they're called like Pirates Bay or whatever, where people started listening to music through the computer. And by the time we got there, that kind of destroyed everything because people were just into downloading individual songs. They weren't into the cover art anymore. Like the CD was like the last stand of that kind of format where you would be excited to go to Warehouse or Sam Goody or one of these stores and pick up a physical product, a physical petroleum-based product, which is now what I perceive it as. Wasn't even thinking about that back then, but you would pick it up and sometimes you'd listen to it in the store because they'd have these listening stations. So you get to preview the album before you buy it. And, but you would get the album and then you'd be excited to see what was inside of the album when you open it up. How extensive the cover art was. Were there lyrics involved? All that stuff mattered. And it added to the experience. So, even within the album, the way that they would compose these things based on the listening experience was they would be a journey. These albums were journeys. Sometimes they would have introductions, interludes, skits in between, things that tied the whole project together, almost like a cinematic experience for your ears. I think Kendrick Lamar, and not on the GNX, but Kendrick Lamar on To Pimp a Butterfly. Well, that was the last time I really heard something like that. I can't remember if Mr. Morale and the Big Stepper kind of followed a similar format, but I do remember listening to that and ingesting it like a movie. But for me, that was like a one-time listen, or a couple. I listened to it a few times. It was a good album, but you have these albums, like for example, The Coup, and you might know about Boots Riley. He's a big guy in cinema now, but when you listen to his music catalog, at least the first 3 Coup albums, you can see where his cinematic thing kind of comes from, because all of these were these albums had stories. You had especially like Still This Album was one of my favorite ones. He had all the interludes where Mr. Repo Man and let me see who else was there that was doing this. Even all of Dr. Dre's early albums, like Doggy Style, was similar. It was a cinematic experience. The Outkast albums were like that, the first 3, and you don't see that anymore. You don't see people. All the De La Soul albums were like that, all the way up until they had the Ghost Weed skit. I think that was like their 4th album. So it's just a whole different experience, and people just ingest these individual songs. It's really like the era of the single, and I think some people have tried to bring back the concept of the album. I definitely see it coming back in people's on-stage performance, how they tie their albums through and through like that. But like Tyler, the Creator, for example. But I don't know. I think we're just in a different era, and it's kind of weird for a dude like me, because for me, listening to music has always been an experience. And now that the times have changed, I've finally adapted to the new format. And I can't think of any albums that I can just really just put on and just slap from beginning to end. Like I said, GNX was a good project. I listened to the Doechii once all the way through, and I was pretty much done with it. It was good. But if I want that kind of experience, I usually go back and I listen to Goody Mob Soul Food, or I listen to, like I said, all those Outkast albums. I just go back in time, really, for that experience. So, I don't know. I don't know what the next thing is for music, what the next format is. I feel like we live in an era of short attention spans. Not only has the album experience changed to single song format, the single song format has changed. Songs used to be much longer back in the day. Like in the 70s and 60s, you would throw on Fela or something, or James Brown or something like that, and you're in store for, a 4 to 10 minute song. Even some of the earlier rap songs, Too Short, Freaky Tales, I think that song is over 10 minutes long. So that's not a thing anymore. As the attention span gets shorter, the format gets shorter, and nowadays people are making songs to fit advertising purposes. So 2 minutes and 35 seconds is like, all right, dude, don't go too much over that, because it has to be advertised in a certain way and packaged in a certain way so it can even get to the consumer via YouTube or these platforms like this. They have parameters to satisfy the algorithm when you're doing your marketing. So people are designing songs with that in mind. And, I am designing songs with these things in mind, because, I got to get my music to you, man. And this is just the era we live in and the time we live in. And it's just really a trip for me to see the format change. And I wonder where it's going to go in the future. And I'm shocked at myself that I've grown and I've changed with the format over time. But I was blessed to come up in an era to experience music in that way, I believe. And if you ever have a chance, go back in time, get yourself a record player and listen to Listen to an album the way that it's meant to be. Break out the liner notes, break out the lyrics, follow along through. Break you out a Fela album, break you out that Goody Mob Soul Food album. That's a great album. Go to the store and buy a record, man. Dig in a crate. Especially if you call yourself a musician or you're interested in music. You can't just understand it from the perspective of 2025. All right, I challenge you. Go back in time, see how we used to consume music. It'll be good for your health. All right.